Hi guys, Small here. Today we are checking out the brand new 6-star operator on the Chinese server of Arknights, Vina Victoria aka Siege Alter. Let's kick things off with a quick rundown. Vina is an arts card, which means all her attacks hit with arts damage instead of the usual physical damage you'd expect from melee operators. But hold on, that's not the full story. Vina is packing a whole lot of true damage in her kit, making her stand out big time in this category. Her third skill especially, it's awesome. High damage output, perfect for shredding those tanky enemies that just won't die. But, and here's the catch, her first two skills, not so hot. Low DPS, and honestly, they feel kinda awkward to use. Plus, her talents and skills are pretty map dependent, so she's not the most versatile operator around. To sum it up, Vina can dish out some serious hurt when you need her, especially against those extra beefy enemies, but don't expect her to be your go-to for every situation. Vina's first talent gives her an attack buff for every ally in the 8 tiles around her. Plus, both Vina and those allies get a nice little bonus in the form of physical damage reduction. Not too shabby, right? Now, at first glance, you might think, oh, so I need to have 8 operators huddled around Vina all the time to get the most out of this talent. And yeah, sure, that's what you need to do if you want to stack it to the max. But good luck squeezing your entire team into one tiny spot. Most maps just don't work like that. But here's the workaround. The talent also counts stuff like Nightingale's Birdcage, Wishadel Shadow of Revenant, or Ella's Mines. So you don't always need actual operators to trigger it. Nice, right? But wait, it gets better. Skill 3 basically solves the problem for you. Vina just summons 8 lions around her on ground tiles, fully activating the talent all by herself. Pretty clever. And here is a little spoiler for the remainder of the video. This whole kit, it feels like it was tailor-made for skill 3, whereas skill 1 and 2 seem like an afterthought. Now, let's talk about that physical damage reduction. It's a solid defensive boost, and I've got a little showcase coming up to really show you the difference it makes. As for her second talent, it slaps a frighten effect on enemies the first time they're hit by Vina, basically disarming them for a few seconds. Could be handy against Sarkaz Lancers, but keep in mind their charged attack only gets delayed. You'll need to take them out fast if you want to stop them completely. There's not a ton to say here, except if you hit an enemy before blocking them, you might waste a couple of seconds of that frighten debuff. One way to work around this is by deploying Vina facing away from enemies, to get the timing just right. Honestly though, this could have been more efficient if the effect only triggered on blocked enemies. And guess what? That's exactly what happens most of the time with skill 3, but we'll dive into that in a bit. Alright, let's talk about Vina's skills. Her first skill makes her next attack deal extra true damage, hitting all ground enemies in a cross shape around her. The damage is boosted by up to 180% of her attack power. And she got an awesome flip animation. Sounds familiar? Yep, it's a nod to Siege skill 2, but with one major downside. Vina can't hold charges. Kind of a bummer. The damage itself, it's on the low side, and that's why the lack of charges stings a bit. Sure, ignoring magic resistance sounds cool, but it doesn't matter much if the damage that sneaks through is barely anything. In fact, with skill 2, Siege can sometimes hold the lane better than Vina with skill 1, which is quite disappointing. But Here's where things get interesting. Episode 14 introduces enemies with shields. They have ridiculous amount of defense and magic resistance, but surprisingly low health. Most operators struggle with these guys, but Vina skill 1 is a match made in heaven with them. And another thing, true damage also ignores dodge, which gives this skill some real utility. So while the numbers might seem underwhelming, this is where it finds its niche. Check out this showcase to see just how clutch true damage can be in dodging heavy scenarios. I bet skill 2 caught a lot of attention, especially with its infinite duration. Infinite duration sounds good on paper, right? Sadly, as an AFK skill, it's pretty underwhelming. But before we get into why it's a letdown, let's break down what it actually does. After a 70-second charge time, Vina permanently boosts her attack range, adds an extra target, and gets an attack buff. If she's got at least 2 operators nearby, the charge time drops to 47 seconds, which is quicker than most AFK skills. Not bad, but here's the catch. The skill deals arts damage, not true damage, and Vina's got 0 magic resistance penetration. Now, when you compare Vina's skill 2 to other AFK skills, it just doesn't hold up against operators like Blaze or Rupianus. Vina has only got 1 block and can hit 2 enemies at a time, and with that low damage output, she's not exactly a lane holding powerhouse. To be fair, Vina wasn't built to be a lane holder, and that's been clear since her first talent in the skill description. Vina wants a crowd of operators around her to really shine. Skill 2 also give me some serious Near Alter skill 1 vibes. Same range, same block count, same AFK style, and honestly, Near Alter skill 1 hardly ever sees use. And I've got a feeling Vina's skill 2 will end up in the same boat. Now let's talk about Vina's third skill, because this is the one that might have you hitting that pull button. It's definitely the skill you want to focus on if you get her. So what does it do? Vina summons lions on 3 deployable ground tiles around her, which can fully activate her first talent. Then she goes swing swing, attacking up to 4 enemies, including those blocked by the lions, all the while dealing true damage. Plus, her attack speed gets a boost, but when the skill ends, the lions disappear. Seriously, why couldn't they leave them there like Wishadel skill 3? Just Hyperglyph playing favorite, I guess. Now, just to clarify, if Vina can reach an enemy on her own, that enemy doesn't need to be blocked to get hit with true damage. This is what sets Vina's skill 3 apart from Near Alter skill 3. The lions themselves deal 500 true damage every 2.5 seconds, but they're pretty squishy, with just 4000 HP and about 300 defense. They won't be able to tank for long, but here's where Vina's talents kick in. She gives them physical damage reduction and applies Frighten to enemies she hits. Sure, her range is still short, but since she can also attack enemies blocked by the lions, she is spreading that Frighten debuffs beyond her range. The awkwardness of her second talent? Gone, because now the debuff is mainly applied to enemies blocked by the lions, meaning none of it gets wasted. And if you are dealing with some really tough enemies, you can ignore the alliance altogether and put your best defender in front of Vina. She'll still go to town on the enemies your defender is holding down. With a maxed out first talent and full potential, Vina skill 3 can dish out around 65,000 true damage per target, which will melt pretty much anything but the sturdiest bosses. And if you count the damage from the lions, you could push past 70,000 damage, though that's a bit of a stretch considering how fast those lions go down. And don't forget, true damage ignores dodge. And let's be real, being able to beat Wishadel at anything is no small feat. Now let's talk about using Vina's skill 3 for Elite Drop. At Mastery 3 it starts with 35 skill points and needs 50 to activate. So with a 15-second wait time it's still possible to use her for Elite Drop. I mean, Silver Ash had the same 15-second wait on his skill 3 and he has been a go-to for years in that role. Sure, Wishadel and Digen Breaker only need 10 seconds to get rolling, so Vina might struggle to compete as a top-tier Elite Dropper, but honestly that's not the main focus here. The 50-second cooldown is a bit long, no doubt, but her physical damage reduction and the Frightened debuff might buy her enough time for a second cycle, especially if she's got a solid defender backing her up. That said, in longer, drawn-out fights, someone like Kal'tsit could outshine her purely because of that cooldown. On the flip side, Vina's ability to deal true damage to unblocked enemies or those blocked by any ally gives her an edge over Near Altar skill 3. Now, the attack bonus from the skill is additive, which means operators like Suzerain, who gives a damage scale buff with her skill 3, can be pretty useful here. Alright, let's wrap this up. Vina is built to be a clutch operator for those moments when true damage really counts. Now, those moments might be few and far between, and for your day-to-day content, other operators will probably get the job done better. But there's no denying Vina's power, and she'll definitely be a solid pick for high-end content. That is, of course, if we actually get some high-end content anytime soon. They did announce a new contingency contract in the half anniversary livestream, but as far as I know, there was no set time frame. And we have yet to see if it will live up to the name and really put players to the test. Anyway, back to Vina. She's without doubts a strong unit, but she's not as universally broken as someone like Searcher. Her strength is map and enemy dependent. If the tile layout doesn't work, you might struggle to deploy alliance, and that means missing out on a lot of those juicy attack buffs. Worst case scenario, you get a stage like SP9 and you'll be scratching your head trying to figure out the best place to drop Vina. Another thing to keep in mind is Vina's short range. She can only hit enemies 1 or 2 tiles ahead, or at most the enemy is blocked in a 3x3 square around her, which can feel pretty meh compared to all the long range operators in today's meta. Oh, and she can't hit aerial targets either. So yeah, Vina is a strong operator, but she's definitely situational. Now, is she worth pulling? We have already talked about how powerful her skill 3 is, and how vital true damage can be for dealing with certain enemies. If that's enough to satisfy your needs, or if you are just a die-hard Siege fanboy, then you don't need any more convincing. Go for it. Otherwise, before you hit that pull button, I want you to consider 4 key points that might make you think twice about going for Vina. First off, take a look at your roster. If you have already invested in true damage operators like Kal'tsit or Neal Altar, Vina could be more of a luxury than a necessity. Sure, Vina is a bit easier to handle than Neal Altar, and she generally packs more firepower than Kal'tsit. Plus, she can hit 4 targets at once, while Kal'tsit and Neal Altar are single target focused. But at the end of the day, they're all doing the same thing, dishing out true damage. With a bit of strategy, cast it, or Neal Altar could serve you just as well as Vina would. Second, Vina is situational, so you might only bust her out once or twice a year to handle a particularly nasty boss. In those cases, maybe it's enough to borrow Vina from your friend. You know, the Siege mega fan who's got a full potential, full mastery Vina, and probably a room full of Saber posters. After all, you did the same with Lane back in CC2, didn't you? Third, let's talk about power creep. Yeah, I know, it's a hot topic, but bear with me for a few seconds. True damage is the best damage type, and that's not going to change. But in today's meta we've got operators who can outclass true damage just with sheer numbers. And don't forget about elemental damage. So far it's pretty much equivalent to true damage. Elemental damage has become a big deal in Arknights, especially with all these new operators that synergize perfectly together. And you can bet Hyperglyph will keep releasing crazy strong elemental damage operators, because, well, it's good business. So what I'm saying is, Vina is not exactly future-proof, despite true damage being the best type of damage, something to keep in mind. Lastly, let's talk about the half anniversary limited banner, which will follow in a few days. As you probably know, Lapland Altar has been announced, along with Suzumam and Crown Slayer. Global players will already know how good the new limited operator is, so they can make an informed decision and choose whether it's worth it to pull for Vina. But the point still stands. If you're low on resources or playing it safe, you might want to save for the limited operator instead of pulling for a standard one who could spook you at any time. Alright, I think that's everything. Thanks for watching, as always, and see you next time.